Please subscribe, like and share our videos. Exclusive content brought to you here on Latif Yahia's channel only. Latif Yahia has asserted his rights under the Copyright, Designs, and Patents Act, 1988 to be identified as the author of this work. This book is sold subject to the condition that it shall not, by way of trade or otherwise, be left, resold, hired out, or otherwise circulated without the author's prior consent in any form of binding or cover other than that in which it is published and without a similar condition including this condition being imposed on the subsequent purchaser. Chapter 3 The Fiday. Now here I am standing in front of him again. He seems barely any different from the time he asked me to paint his father's portrait. He still has his characteristic big brown eyes, his pronounced eyebrows, straight nose and two-day stubble. The biggest difference is his hair is shorter. The Jimi Hendrix bird's nest has got the chop and been replaced by a neat, short cut with pomade, glistening but not greasy. Uday laughs showily and beckons with his big Havana cigar in his right hand for me to sit on a green patterned couch. He casually sits down in a white leather, throne-like armchair. Above him is a huge gold-framed mirror. Uday's manner couldn't be more friendly. He chats away asking how I am and my nerves quickly subside although I still can't work out what's going on, why I'm sitting here, why they've whisked me away from the front in such mysterious circumstances. How do you like it at the front? He asks apparently interested, and then, I've heard you've become a good soldier. I give a brief answer, careful not to say a word out of place. I remember how, in our school days, a single thoughtless remark would spark an angry outburst from him. I know he's all-powerful and if I rile him he could crush me, destroy me and nothing and no one could stop him. What I'm doing is okay, I reply modestly. Another 2 or 3 years and then I'll be working for my father's company. Import, export. Yes, my father imports machines from Europe that make gas cookers. It's a good business. I'm careful not to utter a word about my doubts as to the wisdom of the war in which more than 500,000 men have fallen. Not a syllable about the dead and wounded I've seen. Iraq is great. Saddam is great and so is his family. As for divulging my career plans, since the mood is amiable and pleasant, I feel it best to tell him the truth. Why should I lie that I'm interested in staying in the army? Uday accepts my reply. He even seems to approve. Fine, great. I'm a businessman too, as you probably aren't aware. As you probably couldn't be aware. I admire independent entrepreneurs. He leans back and draws pleasurably on his Havana. He doesn't inhale and blows the blue smoke straight out in my direction. He stares straight into my eyes and says with a superiority that allows no doubt of confusion about the distribution of power between us, don't try to prettify anything, touch anything up. I know everything about you anyway. Everything. His lecture is delivered in a razor-sharp voice which reminds me of Muhammad Ghalib, my squadron leader in the artillery unit where I had been until very recently. And also 2 officers Nasir Baker and Saad Ahmad, perfect party soldiers. They were always mentioning my resemblance to Uday and were always wanting to know whether I came from the family. They were Uday's henchmen, Secret Service agents working for the bosses of Baghdad. Do you want some orange juice? Asked Uday, distracting me from my thoughts. Yes, yes please I reply. I wonder what will happen next. I'm curious. Uday doesn't say a word. He doesn't ring a bell, make a phone call or do anything. Even so, a door opens and a servant in black trousers, white jacket and white gloves brings in orange juice. Freshly squeezed, unsweetened orange juice. He doesn't say a word, puts the glass of juice down in front of me and exits. Completely silent throughout, his head humbly bowed. Once again, I notice that none of Uday's employees dare to look their boss or his guest in the eye. If their eyes do meet by chance, they quickly look away. I follow their example and look around. The meeting room has magnificent pastel-colored wallpaper. No bright, loud patterned kitsch. Nothing tacky or excessively showy. The carpet is thick and expensive. The tasteful furniture obviously from Europe. Even the flowers have been arranged with reticent skill. I take a sip of the orange juice waiting for Uday to speak. But he doesn't. He's just staring at me. I feel I can't ignore him any longer and so look back at him. At that moment, I feel we're both thinking the same thought. We both have slightly curly, short black hair, expressive brown eyes with long, dark eyelashes and thick, crescent-shaped eyebrows that rise up into our foreheads. Both our heads are slightly oval, no prominent cheekbones and no other distinguishing features. Uday draws on his Havana again. His upper lip is barely visible because he has a thick, wide mustache that all Muslims grow after the age of 16. The beard is a symbol of our dignity, a second self. Normally I had a beard, not a bushy one but a well-trimmed one, but beards were forbidden in the army because, if you had one, it was impossible to wear a gas mask so it closes airtight and safely. Gas warfare was a real possibility at any time because both the Iraqi and Iranian arsenals had stockpiles of mustard gas and other chemical weapons. So now my beard had gone and I had a mustache, just like Uday's. During our school days, Uday's slightly protruding teeth were more obvious. Thanks to his mustache and with the Havana in his mouth, they're hardly noticeable. I'm surprised he hasn't got a cosmetic dentist to straighten them, but then why would he bother if everyone was too afraid to mention them? He's a bit taller than I am but not by much. I'd noticed this when he walked up to greet me. Did he shake my hand? I can't remember. I wanted to ask him how his course at the technical university went. Since we'd left school, I'd only had fleeting glances of him as he drove his Ferraris, Porsches, Maseratis or Lamborghinis ostentatiously up and down outside the university on the prowl for girls. If he saw one he liked, he would order one of his bodyguards to invite her back to his palace. If the girl refused, she would be bundled into the bodyguard's car and end up in Uday's palace anyway. Uday didn't have government-sanctioned bodyguards, he had pimps, hangers-on and friends that he would use as security. They carried AK-47s and Uzis and were provided with ID cards from the Special Republic Guard or the Intelligence Service at Uday's request, but they had no formal training and were only accountable to Uday himself. His reasoning for this was that if he used official bodyguards they would have to write up reports each day on his activities. There was only one person in the world that Uday was frightened of, his father. Although Saddam had a tight grip on Iraq, his grip was not as tight as it could have been on his firstborn. His reputation at university was even worse than it had been at school. Not that it particularly bothered me now that he wasn't disrupting my studies. What did bother me was I still got the odd comment that it was my divine blessing that I looked so like him. I wisely decided not to ask. The mood is still friendly on this late September day in that screened-off luxurious room, but I still feel decidedly uncomfortable. Then he finally got to the point. Latif, Uday begins, and his mouth spreads into a grin once again. I'm a direct person and I don't want to beat about the bush. He springs to his feet, walks over, places his left hand on the arm of the couch and leans over me, uncomfortably close. I want you to work with me. Work with you? I echo. I'm alarmed but manage to stay calm and collected enough to say, I'm not talking to the president's son, am I? I'm talking to a school friend who was so keen on my painting. Do you remember? My attempt to avoid the issue bothers him. He hisses, yes, but asks me again, do you want to work with me? We can speak openly, I say and attempt to get to the point. What do you want from me? I want you to be my fiday. Fiday? The word impacts on my brain like a blow from a hammer. During the whole journey here, I'd had an uncomfortable feeling something like this is waiting for me over the horizon. Everything I saw, heard and felt made me feel uneasy. The man in party headquarters, the Mercedes, the silent chauffeur, the elegance of the palace grounds, the quiet hum of the engine. I wanted to run, to swim, to reflectively watch drifting clouds. Do anything to sweat out my mental insecurity until there was no more real sweat on my clingy uniform. And now this, fiday, the word roars around like a hurricane inside my head. A fiday is more than a mere body double. A fiday is everything. In Arab culture, fiday means a disciple, a fighter and partisan. A serf who must be prepared to die for his master. Sadam Hussein has two doubles, two fidays. Everyone in Iraq is aware of it and, presumably, The Western secret services know it too. There's nothing new or sensational about it, as dictators have had doubles since ancient times. Either due to paranoia or an instinctive sense for survival, Saddam has built up and developed a system of fidays to perfection. Whenever assassination attempts are likely or threatened, he brings out his doubles. One Saddam double died in an attack on the president in 1984. Now he has only one, Fawaz al-Amari. Although everyone in Iraq knows about Saddam's fiday, the people never know whether it's Saddam or his double who makes the public appearance. The theory is any would-be assassin will think twice at risking his life to kill an impersonator, so it's a clever tactic with more than one advantage. I remember my commander had once mentioned Fawaz al-Amari to me. "Do you know Fawaz?" he asked. I shook my head and thought Gallup was having a mental aberration, as I couldn't work out what his question was about. I briefly hesitate to reply to Uday. I try to gain time to think how best to politely decline without offending him. The nerves return and my body begins to shake. I don't understand. Am I supposed to protect you? Or what do you mean? Uday isn't pleased. He inhales deeply through his nose and retreats to his ashtray, in which he rests his Havana. Then he turns to me, spreading his arms theatrically wide like an actor unable to project his voice with sufficient drama and so relies on wild, theatrical gestures. "It must be an honor for you to be the president's son on my instructions," he says dramatically. He takes his Havana out the ashtray and draws again on the damp, badly cut end. "But we're all the president's sons," I counter, using a cliché from my political training. Glad something had finally come in useful. "That won't get you anywhere. We've had you under observation for a long time now. We know everything about you. I know where you're going, who you're talking to, what you parents do. I know how much is in your father and mother's bank accounts and also your own account. Everything you understand, everything. I want you because you're the right one. I could protect you. I say. But he interrupts. You don't need to protect me. I want you to be me. Everywhere, always." Uday sees I hesitate again and his features change in an instant. He has trouble controlling himself and yells at me. "What? Don't you want to be Saddam Hussein's son?" The question is a threat. One that stabs deep into my heart. Before now, only members of the president's own family have been used as doubles. Usually a relation whose resemblance has been passed on by genes is given the role. Saddam's second and youngest son, Qusay, employs a distant cousin as his fiday. But for Uday, they clearly can't have found anyone suitable, and so the dubious honor has been given to his former schoolmate, me. On Latif Yahia, the eldest son of a respected Baghdad family. I am the chosen one. Uday sees it as a distinction, the highest honor possible for Uday to bestow, he has given to me. Because everyone in Iraq wants to be a member of the Isaba, the ultimate clan, the group that surrounds the president. But I feel I'm a victim because I know I've no choice. That, on 23rd of September 1987, my fate has been sealed. There's no point in resisting, as Uday will certainly take it personally and won't tolerate a refusal. He probably doesn't even know the meaning of the word no. To him, the wishes of Allah are his wishes. Even that thought hurts me because I'm a deeply religious man. Feeling like a wounded, trapped animal, I struggle for words. Uday is my hunter, executor, the Lord of all being and non-being, the Prophet. Do you expect me to extinguish my name and personality in order to be Uday Saddam Hussein? Uday's reply sounds like a croupier's rien ne va plus. Exactly. He says and juts his chin out at me. That's it. My fate has been decided. But I still try to contradict the son of our great president and appeal to the school friend in him. I'm honored that you want to work with me, but I can't be anyone but myself. I'm surprised and relieved by his reply. Take your time. You don't have to decide right now. For a few seconds, Uday doesn't say anything but then continues, I'll leave you on your own to think about it. When I come back I want a clear yes or no. Despite Uday's demand, my anxiety dissipates like early dawn mist in early morning sunshine. It's like one of those mornings when you wake up completely changed. Uday's proposal, my whole situation had shaken me more than if I was sat on an earthquake fault line. Looking at it one way, it's clear to me that his suggestion is unacceptable. On the other hand, now my initial feeling of dread has completely left me. I'm suddenly curious to know what will happen if I refuse. How will he react to that? Things always work out well for Uday. At school, he attained the highest grades despite the fact he could hardly write. His letters looked like they had been written by a poor unfortunate who was paralyzed down one side. He can't write a sentence without making basic grammatical mistakes that would embarrass a primary school dunce. He's probably never opened a book, let alone read one through to the final page. He can't even read literary Arabic. What happens if I refuse? I ask. To my surprise, he barely reacts. He says, "I'll tell you later." Then leaves me to contemplate in a state of utter confusion. For a very long 10 minutes nothing happens. I sit in a silent, foreboding atmosphere, almost paralyzed on the couch, staring into space. I run my hand over my mustache a few times thinking about Uday's face. When he's in a good mood, he looks quite friendly. But looks can be deceptive. I've already seen terrible things done to other people who annoyed the regime. Things that left them broken. I remember poor Sattar and his cockroach hors d'oeuvres. How we stuffed them into his mouth until he vomited. How we didn't stop because we'd been ordered to do it and because no one can defy an order. Or can they? Occasionally, behind an apparently normal human face there lurks a warped brain that is worse than anything a psychologist could imagine. I need an extra layer of skin, a carapace for my soul. I can't sit there calmly any longer. I cross my legs, then cross them the other way. I want to smoke a cigarette but refrain from doing so out of manners, though the room still reeks of cigar smoke. I get to my feet, rub my hands together, and I'm about to pace around when the door Uday disappeared through opens. The servant appears and asks me if I would like anything. "A glass of water, please," I say. The servant produces one as quickly as a stage magician. I drain the glass, put it down, and begin pacing across the room, measuring it as I go. 1, 2, 3. Why, I don't know. I walk up and down. Fold my arms. Stretch in front of the mirror. Yawn. Examine my dry skin and think I really should do something about it. Uday has perfect skin, no doubt from using the most expensive moisturizers the cosmetic world can produce. As I look into the mirror, it never occurs to me that Uday might be standing behind it. Although Uday said he'd be back in 10 minutes, an hour passes and there's no sign of him. Keeping me waiting is presumably part of his psychological game. After a while, people waiting lose their self-respect. Especially if they know that they have to wait indefinitely because they have no other choice. Making people wait is rude but a sign of power. I reconcile with myself that, waiting for Uday, I could be left for hours and possibly days. As it turned out, it was only another half an hour before Uday made another grand entrance. He was grinning and walking with wide, resolute strides. "Why are you so unsettled, my friend?" he asks. It was then I realized he must have been watching me pacing around through the mirror, or maybe a camera, but somehow. What if I say yes? Then you're my brother and you'll get whatever you want. I'll put that in writing. You'll have the finest life on earth. Your every desire will be fulfilled. Everything that belongs to me will also belong to you. You will be my brother. You understand? Well, sir, that's all very nice, but I can't do it. I'm an army officer and I will be serving in the army for months and years more. Then I want to be a businessman. I can't take on this task. It's too big for me. Please understand, sir. Please understand, I can't do it. Uday storms to the door, wrenches it open, turns to me and spits out words from a hard, resolute face, "No problem. We'll still stay friends." He slams the door shut after him with such force a workman will need to check the hinges. But it isn't a workman who comes but two bodyguards, Azam al-Tikriti and Salam al-Usi. They march up to me, grab me by the arms and rip my two-star officer's epaulettes off my uniform. Instant demotion. My eyes are blindfolded and I'm bundled outside and into a car. It was probably the same Mercedes I arrived in, but this time I don't sit in comfort on the spacious leather back seat. I'm crammed into the boot and the lid slammed down on top of me. There's a jolt as we move off. Blinded and cramped, I'm grateful for the excellent suspension system but still don't enjoy the ride. We drive for a long time, perhaps for half an hour. I get the feeling we are driving around in circles. I never hear any other cars, street noises or even the sound you hear when you speed past a large building. And we didn't stop once, which we'd have had to do if we'd left the palace compound. Sadam's center of power is surrounded by a wall topped with electrically charged barbed wire, and every vehicle is checked in and out at the security gates. The palace is in the Karid Mariam district near Al-Karch, on the banks of the Tigris. The river forms a natural border separating the palace from the city, and the grounds are spread over several square kilometers. If we were near the Tigris, I'd be able to hear running water. So where are we? The car slows and the tires bump at regular intervals, which gives me the clue we're gliding past the grand residences of the presidential family. They don't want to be disturbed by Uday's speeding supercars. The architecture of these buildings is the very best. I noticed that on my way in. While millions of us were in tents or dugouts fighting the Khomeinis, Saddam was having his palace refurbished by a French firm who were installing every possible luxury facility and security precaution. An occasional Iranian missile still sneaked past our defense systems to Baghdad, and its prime target was our godless president. The palace has 4 entrances. The first is on the western side near the suspension bridge. It's known as the family gate because it's the private entrance and exit for Saddam and his family, his ministers and their families. I was brought in through it. The second entrance is to the north of the palace by the Republican Bridge. The Baghdad Gate provides exclusive access for members of the Revolutionary Leadership Committee and the National Committee. A third gate connects the east and north wings and is reserved for the inhabitants and workers of the President's Palace. The fourth entrance, the Lion's Gate, is for the head of the Secret Service and his agents. All of them from all the different branches of Jahaz al-Amin, al-Qas and Jahaz al-Mukhabarat al-Aman. All these gates are at least a mile away from Saddam's main residence and are so strongly defended that even a tank would have difficulty gaining entry. 900 meters behind the high walls that a German wall-building specialist would be proud of, rails are set into the asphalt. Each is about 30 centimeters wide. When your car drives over them, you feel a slight bump and hear a sharp tack-tack noise. No doubt these rails contain spikes that shoot up the second a guard presses a button, so there's no possibility of a suicide bomber driving up to the palace. I have seen similar nail chains used to protect our frontline positions. We can't have passed over those security precautions or I'd have heard and felt them. So we must be a long way from the entrances at which the 3rd, 5th, 7th and 9th units of the Republican Guards take turn to watch. But the first 2 main entrances don't even mark the start of the palace grounds, as they're at least 3 kilometers away from the public road for the ordinary traffic and pedestrians of Baghdad. Separating this road and the palace is a buffer zone, a kind of no man's land. All the buildings around the palace are occupied by Secret Service personnel. In the past, it was where the foreign embassies were located, but they were relocated when Sadam Hussein came to power. Even the Ibn Sina Hospital was commandeered. Previously, it had been a private hospital of only moderate expertise and equipment, but Saddam had had European and American firms totally renovate and install the latest medical technology. All the doctors and nurses who had worked there were sacked and replaced with new ones whose ideological training matched their medical qualifications. Now the hospital is Saddam's private clinic. After about half an hour in the car, I've completely lost my bearings and have even given up trying to guess where we are. Suddenly, the driver brakes abruptly. The bodyguards haul me out and, with my eyes still blindfolded, lead me up some steps and then through various doors and rooms. I finally stumble down more steps and through 2 doors. When my blindfold is removed, I'm in a small room hardly bigger than a shower cabinet. It can't measure more than 1 meter by 1.5 meters. No window, no bed, no toilet. There isn't even a sink. The whole cell is painted red walls, a bulb giving off a bright, red glare, a red concrete floor and, strewn on the floor, a red blanket. It has a noticeably high ceiling. Without saying a word, the bodyguard slammed the iron door behind them. 1 hour, 2 hours pass. I think they must want to make me colorblind. I close my inflamed eyes and wish they'd left the blindfold. I open them again and pull them wider than ever before trying to get used to the red. But that hurts even more. I put the blanket over my head, but the blanket is red and so is the floor. Red, red, red. Everything is red. I feel I'm in hell. I press my fists into my closed eyes for a few minutes. I see stars, flashes of light. When I take my hands away and open my eyes, I see nothing but black, but then everything goes that terrible red again. Without even a barred window, there's no way of knowing what time it is. I'm alone in this timeless, surreal room. I don't even know if it's day or night. I've no idea how long I've been slumped there. Half a day? Longer? I've lost all sense of time. But that's the least of my problems. There's no toilet and I need to go. No food or water and I'm starving and thirsty. Just the red. I think of my friends at the front. I think of my parents. But what's the good of that? They don't know where I am, what I'm doing or what's going on. And even if they did, they couldn't help me. At long last I hear footsteps, then voices, then the clink of keys. I must get clear from the heavy iron door or I'll be hit as it swings open. I cower in a corner, my heartbeat pounding so loud the doctors in the Ibn Sina hospital could probably hear it. If I had a pistol, my finger would be on the trigger. The gun would be cocked and aimed and I would be staring down the barrel as I'd been taught. Through squinted eyes, I can just about recognize Azam in the red haze. He's holding a tray and hands it to me. "Eat something," is all he says. As he turns and leaves, I squat down and cram the food into my mouth. That's all that happens for days. Even when I'm standing, I can't stretch out or my arms would hit the walls. The concrete floor is hard to sit on. I can't lay down to sleep and the wall gives me backache. My legs hurt. All I can do is crouch in a corner and constantly worry how all this will end. At some point, I begin muttering to myself. Not proper sentences but just an inane mumbling. Like a baby, or a child learning to talk, I move my lips, emit sounds until the guards bring me food and water again. Only mealtimes tell me whether it's morning or evening. My first meal is always white bread and water. In the evening, warm, sticky rice and water. This causes me another problem. During the first 2 days, I managed to hold back my bodily functions and only urinate once for a short time as, when I saw the urine flowing towards my blanket, I was able to stop. I hold back my stools until my intestines feel they are about to implode. It's painful and a losing battle. I shout, kick the door, thump the walls and finally beg for a toilet. But no one answers my pleas and I have to give up my dignity and my upbringing. I defecate pressing myself into a corner in the hope I won't have to tread or sit in my own excrement. The stench is so appalling that my eyes sting. As I squat in humiliation, I notice dried blood is encrusting the walls. I know it's not mine but it sets me thinking about just how bad things must get for the inmates kept here. So bad they try self-mutilation to end their stay. I can understand why but swear to Allah and on my father's name that Uday will never reduce me to that. I always keep half a beaker of water so I can maintain a modicum of hygiene. After my ablutions, I spend the rest of my time crouching or sleeping in the opposite corner to my ever-growing pile of poo. I've placed my blanket over it as it quickly got soaked with urine so it was useless to wrap around me. At least it means I don't have to look at my feces. One consolation was I found a pencil stub in my pocket. I used it to sketch on the cell wall. This time, a portrait of Saddam was not on of my works of art to-do list. These drawings were found on the red walls after the US-led 2003 invasion. I also used my precious pencil to mark on the wall how many times I was brought bread and rice. That's how I knew that I'd been locked in the red hellhole a week when a visitor arrives to see me. None other a personage than the president's eldest son. Uday appears in the doorway. I can't see him clearly but I recognize his mocking tone. "Hello Latif, how do you like it here?" I don't reply. His bodyguards haul me to my feet and blindfold me again. With their help, I retrace my stumbling footsteps back out the building the way we came in. I never thought I'd be so relieved to breathe fresh air. I can feel the September sun and the soft feel of grass beneath my feet, sheer luxury after a week of a hard, concrete floor. The blindfold is torn from my eyes. It's as though an explosion has gone off in my eyeballs. I can't see anything. Not even my hands, as I instinctively press my palms into my closed eyes, as I did in the red cell. I stand like that for 10 or 20 seconds, then cautiously take my hands away and open my eyes for a moment. My eyes blink and water as they try and focus. Everything that comes into focus is red. The trees, the grass, the whole garden. Even Uday, who is standing with a huge grin on his face, is red. His shirt, his trousers, his face, even his protruding teeth are red. "Have you thought about my suggestion?" he asks. My watering eyes notice that he's now unshaven, like myself. He's allowed his beard to grow, to look more like me, I wonder? "You've changed your mind, haven't you?" He knows the ordeal I've just endured. I'm sure he knows the power of a stay in that cell. It's probably housed hundreds of people who have displeased him, and he's derived much sadistic amusement from the effect the facilities have had on his guests. That proud men could be reduced to having to lie in their own shit. That they would even roll in it in their sleep as they endured a living nightmare. I still can't see him clearly, but my fury exceeds my diplomatic skills. Officers of the Iraqi army cannot be held captive without the knowledge of the Ministry of Defense. That is the law. I haven't murdered anyone. I haven't pulled your family through shit. The ministry must. Must what? 1,000 officers like you aren't worth the soles on my shoes. The arrogant son of a bitch, I think. But don't rile him further. To my relief, my eyesight is returning. I begin to see things clearly again and in full, glorious, technicolor. An unpleasant stench makes me look down at my uniform, which is smeared with dried-on feces. I must look humiliated and pathetic. "I'll set my dogs on you and rape your sisters if you say no again," shouts Uday. His face is red again, but due to his rage, not my eyes now. And now I also know that further resistance is pointless. It's one thing for me to refuse and suffer the consequences, but I cannot be responsible, even if only indirectly, for him harming my family. My sisters are only 12 and 8. Sweet, innocent girls who love me. I would do anything to help them, and Uday is capable of doing anything to hurt them. I remember an event from my student days. Nala Sabeh was a pretty girl who studied at university in the same class as Uday. Until, one day, she disappeared. Uday had her seized from the university grounds and delivered to a property he owned to the north of Baghdad. It looked like a farm, but, in reality, it was a training camp for Uday's fighting dogs. Bullish Rottweilers, powerful Mastiffs, slim but muscular Dobermans were all toughened up with blows and raw meat. For weeks, Nala Sabeh was held prisoner. She was beaten into submission, abused and raped. After Uday had had his fun and tired of her, he locked her in a cage with his starving dogs. Follow for the next chapter.